So once we have multiple offers, okay, so your first action step is list all your marketable skills. Your second action step is create multiple offers, get creative. So, as we think about moving forward with the business and tacking, remember that when we move forward, it's never linear. It's never a straight line from A to B. In fact, it's more like a zigzag because we're always making adjustments along the way, and that is normal. That's what we should be doing is we should be reading the conditions in the market. We should be looking around our business. We should be making adjustments fairly frequently, maybe yearly, annually, maybe quarterly. It again depends on the cycle that you're in order to be prepared in your business, you should have some type of business plan. And if you need help creating one, I have done that with a lot of clients, but I'll tell you, Canva has some really great basic starter tools. If you just go into Canva and search up business plans, that's a great way to get started. Business goals. Again, in normal market conditions, we have annual and usually quarterly targets for our businesses. And we hopefully are including monthly savings into our business plan, our business goals. We usually secure mentors or networks for accountability. But we also, during normal times, we develop emergency plans. We'll talk about those in just a minute. I also have, and I recommend a binder where I call it my if I'm gone binder. So if something were to happen to me, or if I'm gone for a period of time, or I became disabled or something and could not be in my business, I have a binder where I keep everything about my business. My passwords are in a different location, but it's all my providers. My insurance information is in there. My bank information is in there. I have my piano tuner is in there. All the venues that I work with are in my emergency or in my if I'm gone binder. So anything that someone would need to know, if I had to step out of my business for a month, someone else could step in and keep things generally running. So that's the in if I'm gone binder. You can call it whatever you want, but that's part of my emergency plan. I also schedule annual assessments and reviews for myself, and I do those quarterly and annually. Um, you may also want to take advantage of local business groups like women's business leadership groups or your local small business association. And you may also want to consider some volunteerism and philanthropy in your community because, again, those are huge, powerful networking places where you can find business and you can find clients and you can find collaborations. So now is the time to continue getting yourself out there. Don't isolate and stay at home. Here are some basic questions you can ask when you're doing those assessments. And this is where some of your systems and tools come in handy. You're going to use your calendar, you're going to use your CRM platform, you're going to use your budgeting tools to answer some of these questions. How did I spend my time? How effective was it? Have I met my targets? If so, how did I do it? If not, why not? What are some of the strategies that worked in the last quarter? What are the strategies that didn't work in the last quarter? That's why those questions were on your survey as well, to find out, to get you to think about what was working and what wasn't working so that you can stop what wasn't working and we can help you with maybe what did work and you can build on that. So this is part of making these adjustments, and I recommend making adjustments quarterly during times of crisis and chaos. You don't have time really to wait for annual because things are going to change really fast. And remember, these fluctuations are going to happen pretty quickly. So I recommend quarterly during these times of like chaos and uncertainty. Quarterly reflection, quarterly journaling, quarterly documentation at the very least. Emergency kit. So if you have ever been part of any kind of emergency situation, and hopefully you haven't had a terrible experience with that where you've been flooded out or you've had a fire or anything like that. But of course, we know that happens. And so a lot of people have emergency kits for their home and for themselves and their children, their pets. But a lot of people don't have one for their business. So this is your next action step is you're going to create an emergency plan for your business. And you're going to create some what if scenarios and you're actually going to write this stuff out. Okay. What if you couldn't be, if you're a small service, if you're in the service business, like a yoga studio, What if you couldn't be in person? Well, we already went through that with COVID, but write it out and make sure you have, like, here's what I would have to do. Because again, during times of crisis, you don't have time to be trying to come up with creative ideas if you don't have to. Again, our job during crisis is to be that leader, to make those decisions and to communicate those decisions very quickly and effectively. So if you have all this done ahead of time, you'll be able to do that really well and really confidently. Now, what if you had a situation where you couldn't be online? Maybe you are an online provider where you do everything online. What if you couldn't do that? How would you continue to run your business? You need to think through that and have a plan for that. What if you had to leave your home or your business space? What if your leased space um, gets shut down for some reason? There's a flood, there's a fire, there's, whatever, electrical problems, and you have to be shut down. Or your landlord decides to just cancel your lease, or your rent goes up by $1,000 and you can't afford to be there anymore. What are you going to do? You need to have a business plan or an emergency plan for when those things happen. If you had to leave, like for me, my business is in my home. So I know exactly, because I have my binder, I know exactly what I need to have with me if I had to leave my business, my home, and evacuate right away. And I know I have my insurance information. I know all the forms that I have. I have my business licensing. I have all my information. I have all my stuff all together in one handy binder. So as long as I grab that and I can grab anything else I need, just like I would for my home in an emergency, I would be able to still, even if I couldn't function as a business, I would be able to file those claims and be able to kind of still make progress in getting myself through that crisis. You have to ask yourself, what if the money systems change or go offline? How are you going to get paid and how are you going to pay for things? A lot of people don't want to think about this, but I'm here to tell you you need to be thinking about, what if the money systems, what if we're not on auto pay? What if our credit cards aren't working? What if we can't pay online? What are you going to do? How are you going to get paid? How are you going to pay for things? I won't say anything more about that, but I'm happy to talk with people about that individually if they want to talk about that. What if we lose the power grid? A lot of people don't want to think about that happening, but did y'all see what happened in Chile? They lost their power grid, the whole country. No cell service, no lights, no phones, no nothing. And it was everybody, the hospitals, the prisons, everybody lost the power grid. What are you going to do in that situation? Now, that's also a life and death situation, not just for your business, but for you as a human being. But again, what are you going to do? What do you have in place in order to get through that time? You also want to have an emergency plan for if your business is failing, if you become disabled, or if you decide, I need to shut this business down and just get a different job, or I need to start a new business. So these are just some ideas to consider when you're looking at emergency plans. And I know it's a little overwhelming, but putting a little bit of thought and time and preparation into this stuff now is going to help you when these situations happen. Will all of these situations happen to you? No. But is one of them probably going to happen to you? Yes. So we want you to be prepared. So here are your action steps. I already talked about those. And if you can get that much done in the next week or two, you are going to be on fire and ready for some things that we are hearing coming through the business world, coming through the economic world, some things that we think are going to happen and continue to happen with our markets and with tariffs coming and with all sorts of other things happening. So I am urging you, do this stuff over the next week or two and be ready. Fasten your seatbelts because it's coming. And that's why we're offering these workshops for you. All right, that does it for me. And I think we're out of time.